Welcome into the Pickswise NFL Show. I'm your host, Rachael von Oranje, and with me is Coach Jeff Reinebold. Jeff, how are you?
I'm outstanding, Rachel. I am even better than I was yesterday because we're one day closer to the National Football League.
I'm so excited for that. Now, before we get into that, how's the offseason been for you? It's Corona apocalypse out there, and we have a season that's in flux. College football. Some conferences are doing it, some aren't. The NFL, right now they're saying that it's going to happen. But do you feel like it's going to happen?
You know what, Rachel? I know there's a lot of people that are wringing their hands about this, and football has been a part of my every year in my adult life, and as both a coach and a player. And I really think that people have to understand that the National Football League is committed to seeing this thing through, to making sure that we play a regular season, that we end with a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay February 7th, and that they do it in a fashion that's both, competitive and safe for the players and everybody concerned.
Yeah, definitely safety is obviously the number one concern here. Number two concern is probably money. Everybody's got to make it, and that's the job to do there. So hopefully it happens. And I'm going to just knock on some wood really quick, just to, make sure that we don't jinx it. Now, with that being said, it's been a very unique off season, to say the least. And I want to know, Jeff, how do you think it's going to affect the season going forward? As far as training camps go and everything, they've had a lot less of it than they're used to getting. How much do you think this affects the good teams and the bad teams?
I think it's going to have a huge effect. Rachel, we're in this business to win, obviously, but you're also now, this show is about helping people pick winners. And there's some factors that are not going to be in play, and some other factors are going to be in play. When I first went to the National Football League, Dick Vermeil taught us that every home game across the league is worth a 3-point advantage just because it's a home game. Well, now you take some of the stadiums in the National Football League, Kansas City, you're talking about the Raiders' new facility, the Mercedes-Benz Dome in New Orleans. Those are tough places to play. Now, if they don't have fans, it's going to completely change the dynamic of the home field advantage. So there's a lot of things that, you used to be able to say, okay, that's a bet, where I think this year you're really going to have to watch this show, and you're really going to have to lock in to be able to make money in betting the NFL this year.
Yeah, home field advantage is, we don't know if that's really going to be a thing anymore. So it's definitely going to be interesting to watch that. So look, in the AFC, Mahomes gets a monster contract, and I'm not gonna argue with it. I think the young man definitely deserves it. Tom Brady no longer in the AFC. He goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He pulls Gronk out of retirement. DeAndre Hopkins leaves the AFC to go to the Cardinals. There's some big names that have switched, on this offseason. As it pertains to the AFC, how much do you think the AFC took a downfall, or is it still going to be at the top of the game?
I agree with you in that it's been the most tumultuous offseason we've seen in recent memory. But I do believe, Rachel, that the AFC is still the most talented top to bottom of the two conferences. Now, that's not to say an NFC can't win the Super Bowl, team can't win the Super Bowl. But when you look at the AFC, I believe that the best teams and the most outstanding players, most of them reside in the AFC.
All right, so the team that has dominated the AFC in my entire adult life, it feels like, has been the New England Patriots. The Patriots have had a lot of their teammates opt out because of the Corona apocalypse. And then, of course, like we just said, Brady and Gronk, they're Buccaneers now. Patriots, right now, as it stands, they're the third odds-on favorite on several websites to win the AFC, which I'm a little dumbfounded by. Where do you think the Patriots end up at the end of the season?
I think that's a reasonable place to put them. I think you got to understand that coaching matters, and the best coach that's ever prowled the sidelines in the National Football League is Bill Belichick. Now, when we were looking at the start of training camp before the opt-outs came, you'd say they will win on defense because they still had a really strong defense coming back from last year. But then you take out Donta Hightower, you take out Patrick Chung, you take out Marcus Cannon at offensive tackle. Those are huge losses that you really struggle to find that caliber of player in training camp. So obviously signing Cameron Newton was a big plus. This will be a new day in New England where they have a guy who can do some things physically that frankly Tom couldn't do. And if Cam is healthy, he's a transition player. He can transition a team to greatness, and he can make players around him better. I don't know when you look at the Patriots, and we can talk about in detail with the Patriots, but they've got to find some threats offensively other, than Julian Edelman. And we'll talk about, I think, how they'll be able to do that. But I still say the Patriots are going to be a factor in the race.
Yeah, adding Cam Newton, definitely, a big upgrade there besides the other Auburn quarterback that Bill Belichick was trying to sell us all on. But I digress. Are we completely just Josh Allen and the Bills? Are we completely just throwing them out?
No, I'm going to tell you what. For my money, I'm going to pick the Bills as the team that's going to win the AFC East. I think the Patriots are obviously going to take a step back. The Jets are still in the rebuilding mode, and Miami, we don't know what we've got down there yet. They had a great offseason, but we've seen with Cleveland, winning the offseason can be sometimes a lot different than winning during the season. The Bills have the best roster, top to bottom, in that division. They go out and they add Stephon Diggs to Cole Beasley. Josh Allen's a great young quarterback. They're committed to running the football. They just signed their head coach to a long-term deal. McDermott's done a great job of adding toughness and character to the Bills. They drafted well with A.J. Epinesa. So I think the Bills are the team to beat in the AFC East.
Yeah, I agree with you there for sure. And my alma mater, University of Houston, we have Ed Oliver up there doing big things, and I'm pretty sure he's going to keep growing and doing great in the NFL. Now, moving over to another team that I expect to be the next dominating team in the AFC for the next decade, the Chiefs, right? And as we just mentioned, Patrick Mahomes, 10-year mega deal. He's living his best life over there. Do you think that he was worth all that money?
Yeah, this is really an interesting one, Rachel, because he got a lot of criticism, and even, Lee Steinberg, his agent, got criticism for leaving some money on the table. And, he probably could have gotten even more money if that's mind-boggling as that is. But the reality of it is, this is a different kid. Patrick Mahomes wanted to be taken care of, like every player wants to be taken care of. But he understood that in order for him to leave a legacy of championships, like Tom Brady did, like Peyton Manning did, like Brett Favre did, he needed to have other players around him. And so he gave the Chiefs some flexibility in his contract. And, I think that was key in their being able to keep good players in Kansas City.
Absolutely. Now, somebody else who has had a breakout past 2 years, very, very close to Kansas City, is going to be Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Now, not so much success in the postseason, but definitely the MVP of the regular season. How far do you see Baltimore and Lamar Jackson going this year?
Well, I think Baltimore will go as far as Lamar Jackson takes them. And the issue with Lamar Jackson has been, Rachel, that when you get to the playoffs, football changes in the playoffs, and it's tougher to move the ball. It's tougher to win. You've got to be able to throw from the pocket to win. And right now, as dynamic a player as he is, and he is in the process of, I think, revolutionizing the quarterback position, if you can't throw from the pocket, then you're going to struggle when you get behind. And in both cases, when they got bounced out of the playoffs after having great seasons, he has not performed well in the playoffs. So he's got some yet to grow, and it's in terms of his ability to throw from the pocket and go through his full field reads.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, a guy that is known for being a gunslinger and definitely knows how to throw that ball is Phillip Rivers. And this guy is just Charger in my head. It's my whole life. I feel like he's just been in San Diego, and of course he has, but he's now a Colt. What do you think about Phillip Rivers and the Colts? That's a fantastic roster, great offensive line, got a running game, good defense, great secondary. What's Phillip Rivers going to do with that team?
Well, I think it's going to come down to what Phillip Rivers we see. The Phillip Rivers we saw last year in San Diego turned the ball over way too much. And the blueprint that Frank Reich has in Indianapolis to win is don't turn it over, run the ball. They've got a great, as you mentioned, a great offensive line. They're going to have to develop another receiver outside of T.Y. Hilton, but I think they can do that. And then Phillip's got to be able to protect the ball, because way too many times last year, Rachel, when you break him down on tape, you saw him making bad decisions with the football. Now, part of that is the fact that he played behind an offensive line that struggled to protect him. So he's playing behind a very good offensive line in Indianapolis. So it's going to be interesting to see. He could be the guy that elevates them right up to the top of the AFC.
Yeah, well, as it stands right now, the Colts are plus 135 favorites to win the AFC South. The division is definitely, I don't think that you can hand it to Phillip Rivers, but he's definitely going to be playing on the best team I think that I've ever seen him play on. Obviously, in the same division, we have the Titans, who went really far in the postseason last year. Ryan Tannehill, who knew if the guy could stay healthy that, he could play like that. And of course, having Derrick Henry right behind him is huge. And then Deshaun Watson, can't wait to see what he does without DeAndre Hopkins. Is he going to elevate, or is he going to fall down? As far as the AFC South goes, who do you think wins this division, in your opinion?
Well, I agree with you that the Colts have got to be the odds-on favorite because they've got the best roster in that division. But the Titans are extremely well coached. Mike Vrabel does a great job. I'm a little concerned about Derrick Henry. 400-plus touches last year, Rachel. That's a lot of touches. And typically running backs, and I know he's a different guy, but typically running backs struggle after a 400-touch season. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. They've got to find somebody, and I mean anybody, that can rush the passer. They brought in Vic Beasley in free agency. He's been AWOL in camp for the first 2 weeks. So it remains to be seen whether he can be that guy, because last year, when they needed pass rush, they couldn't find it. They couldn't manufacture it. And I think that's the big hole in the Titans.
Yes, so we have the Colts at plus 135, and the Texans are plus 291. So that's quite a dip from where they've been in the past. In your opinion, who wins the AFC, period?
Well, I think Kansas City has still got to be the favorite, because I think they've got the best roster in the division. They kept their coaches together. I was told very early in coaching that the toughest coaching job you're going to have is after you win a championship, because everybody wants to get paid. Everybody wants to take the bows. Everybody wants to, everybody's trying to get your players, get your coaches. But Kansas City has weathered that storm. You saw Sammy Watkins, who's a third receiver, agree to come back to Kansas City for less money that he could have gotten on the open market. And that's a little bit of that Patrick Mahomes factor that we talked about. So I take Kansas City.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Coach. I just can't see anybody stepping in and encroaching on what they're building over there. Now, switching our focus to the NFC, there was a move made last night that went public. So we have Everson Griffin moving to the Dallas Cowboys, which I personally think is a great pickup. It's a one-year deal, $6 million. As you mentioned earlier, Stephon Diggs switches teams. There were some moves in the NFC. What was the biggest move this offseason, in your opinion?
Well, again, the Griffin move is a big one because of the nature of who he's going to. Look at the Cowboys. And, you're in Houston, and when you're in Texas, you're around the Cowboys. It's everywhere, right? And you look at the Cowboys, and you got Zach, you've got Dak, you've got Cooper, you've got, just really good players at every level of their offense. The question was the defense. Mike McCarthy's going to come in. I think he's going to add some stability to the thing. But if you can bring in a guy like Everson Griffin at this time, you upgrade your defense extremely, extremely aggressively. Now, I will say this. There is a belief in coaching that a great pass rusher makes a better corner as opposed to a shutdown corner making a better pass rusher. So you want to be great from the front back. And I think the Cowboys under Mike Nolan will see a more aggressive, more multiple kind of defense. And I think, again, getting him in the fold was huge for the Cowboys.
All right. I think we're going to go to break really quick. And when we return, we're going to touch more on the NFC South and the 2020 NFL season. Welcome back. We are the Pickswise NFL Show, again, with Coach Jeff Reinebold and your host, Rachael von Oranje. And we're going to get right back into it with the NFC. You really can't can't even mention the NFC anymore nowadays in 2020 without thinking the Buccaneers and Tampa Bay and Gronkowski and everything that they have going over there. I can only imagine that Bruce Arians is just ecstatic about the possibilities that are going on in Tampa. Now, with that being said, the Saints are the minus 110 odds-on favorites to win the NFC South. What do you think about that?
Well, Rachel, I lived in Las Vegas for a year, and I had a guy an old sports book guy told me one time, he said, look around, kid. And he said, see all these big hotels? They weren't built because the guys who set the line don't know what they're doing. And I think that's exactly how I see it. I think the Saints right now have the better roster. And I know that there's all the Tampa Bay talk and all of that. But you look at the Saints top to bottom and you say, you got Drew Brees, you go out and you lose Teddy Bridgewater, but you go out and get Jameis Winston as a backup and as a proven player. And, I can argue with you statistically that Jameis Winston's a way better quarterback than people have given him credit for in his career. I think some of his personality has worked against him. But you add Emmanuel Sanders and stick him next to Michael Thomas, who's the best receiver in football, in my opinion. They can run the ball. They've got the best offensive line in the conference, and they've got playmakers on all three levels of that defense. Factor in that half of the time they play inside the Mercedes-Benz Dome, and we talked about the home field advantage. If fans are allowed in there, that place, I've been in there, and it is hard to even hear. And now, how big is that Bucs-Saints game week 1? Gigantic.
It is a very big game. Tom Brady, though, if we know anything about him, I know that he feels differently. In fact, he just recently tweeted hashtag LFG. Have you heard LFG before?
Yeah, and I'll tell you
what. Are you familiar with the term?
Yes, I am. And for Tom to have him go down that LFG category, it's like, whoa, that's strong. But I think for Tom, a change is as good as the rest. And you looked at him last year in New England when you watched him on tape, and he couldn't throw the ball outside the hash marks. He couldn't, or outside the numbers, and he really struggled to get the ball down the field. Now, look at what he's got in Tampa. And, you've got Godwin and Evans outside. You got 3 tight ends. I mean, the flexibility that Bruce Arians has with that personnel is amazing, because O.J. Howard's a great player. Cam Brate's a good player. And Gronkowski's, we know what Gronk is. Can Tristan Wirfs, the kid they drafted out of Iowa, survive at right tackle? Because Tom's tough to protect. Obviously, he'll get it out of his hands fast, but he doesn't move very well, and stationary quarterbacks tend to get knocked down quite a bit.
Yeah, that's true. And he's definitely, probably safe to say, not as athletic as the previous Jameis Winston was, so probably not as quick on his feet. The Buccaneers, they're plus 160, so they're the second odds-on favorites to win the division. But yeah, as you said, Tom Brady, he's got a lot of toys down there, and Bruce Arians is a guy that I have been a fan of for a long time. I became familiar with him whenever he started coaching the Cardinals and kind of revived Carson Palmer. And they went to they didn't go to the Super Bowl. I'm sorry. They went to an NFC Championship game, and I know that he loves a gunslinger, and that's what he's coached throughout his career. And Tom Brady is a very, very different style. So just really quickly, I want to know, how do you think that the chemistry between these two, because Tom Brady, very precision, cuts you up in pieces going down the field. Bruce Arians, he's publicly said he doesn't really care about interceptions. They don't bother him the way that they bother other coaches. He just wants you to sling it down the field. How do you think the chemistry is between these two?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see how it develops. But Bruce is famous for the quote, "No risk it, no biscuit." And I think Tom has grown up his whole career in the Patriots system, which is about ball control, complementary football, play field position, win on defense, and then they kind of grew into being a dynamic offense. I think for Tom, it's going to be a really fun experience to go to a place where somebody's not looking over his shoulder on every bad decision that he makes. If you've ever been around Tom on the practice field, one thing, Rachel, that is unique about him is he is an absolute perfectionist, not only in his own performance first, but the performance of every single player around him. I saw Cameron Brate said he couldn't believe how accurate Tom Brady was. He thought having the ball, somewhere around his body was good enough. And Brady'd make a throw that was 8 inches to the right too far, and he'd come back and Tom would be on his, in his head about, hey, I got to make a better throw for you. And Brady shook his head and go, dude, that's like, you kidding me? And so I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a great mix. I like your comment about Bruce. I think Bruce Arians is, you hear that thing quarterback whisper around, and there really aren't very many of those guys, but Bruce Arians, I think he is. And he understands players. He understands NFL players. He'll get the best out of that Tampa Bay bunch.
It's funny you said no risk it, no biscuit. I have a T-shirt that says no risk it, no biscuit. No joke. So to kind of wrap up the division, the Saints, as we said, minus 110, odds on favorite. Bucks plus 160. And then we have my lowly Falcons sitting there at plus 700 as the third favorite to win the division. The Panthers are plus 1,400. I think it's safe to say they're probably not going to do anything. Who do you think wins the division? And does the second place team make the playoffs?
Well, let me give you a little glimmer of hope for your Falcons, girl, because I don't know if I've ever seen an NFL team that could start 11 first-round draft choices like they can on offense. They should be absolutely dynamic on offense. Now, how much Gurley's got left in the tank, I can't tell you. It'll be interesting to see. I know that they'll probably manage him very closely, but their defense has got to get better. But that's Dan Quinn's, that's what he does. He's a defensive coordinator. So if they get better on defense, they could rise up and beat anybody and could become, in my opinion, a wild card team. Could there be 3 teams from that division in the playoffs? I don't think so, but I certainly think there'll be 2.
Yeah, I like what you have to say, and I love your optimism. Definitely Dan Quinn's specialty is defense. What he did in Seattle was phenomenal, especially with that secondary. It has not translated to the Falcons very well in his tenure here, but I know that team is definitely going to be playing for his job as they pulled together towards the second half of last year and stepped their game up. Now, over to the NFC West, another really, really tough division. You have the 49ers. You have the Seahawks, Russell Wilson, who I think is the best quarterback in the league. And then you have Kyler Murray, trying to build on what he did last year and with his new toy and DeAndre Hopkins. And then, don't forget the Rams. When not long ago they were in the Super Bowl. What is your just kind of general outlook on the NFC West right now? Niners.
Best roster in the division, best head coach in the division, best head coach general manager combination in the division, best pass rush in the division, and I can go on and on and on. Best ability to run the football. The question with them, and we saw it on Super Bowl Sunday. Late in the game, they're up 10 points, and they couldn't close the deal. And that's what champions have to do. They have to close the deal. I'm not sold yet on Jimmy Garoppolo. When he missed Manuel Sanders on a post cut by 1.5 yards with minutes left to play in the game that would have won the game, the great quarterback makes that throw in that situation. And I talked to Manuel after the game. He was absolutely sick because that was a moment, that may never come again in a career where you would be instantly, you're a legend in San Francisco lore, 60-yard touchdown catch to win the Super Bowl. And they couldn't get it done. They're the best team, but to say that they're not a flawed team, I can't say that. They've got George Kittle. They're going to be a little young at wide receiver. Their offensive line took a little bit of a step back with Joe Staley out. Now they went out and signed free agents. I understand that. But I just really feel like they're the best team in this division. You talked about the Seahawks, and I'm a big Pete Carroll fan. But until they start playing some defense in Seattle, Russell Wilson is doing way too much. He has to carry that team on his back. We talked about Deshaun Watson. Russell Wilson, he should have back problems from carrying that team for the last 3 years. The Rams, if they don't run the football, I think we've seen that Jared Goff struggles sometimes, and they need a running game. They've had problems with the offensive line. They've lost a lot of players in the last couple of years. And the Cardinals right now, in my opinion, although they're on the rise, I think it's just too far to go to catch the Niners.
Yeah, no disagreement for me there, especially whenever it comes to Russell Wilson. That's part of the reason why I think he is the best quarterback in the league, is because what I watch, I mean, he makes chicken salad out of chicken poop. Forgive my language, but that young man is phenomenal. Now the 49ers are plus 100 favorites to win the NFC West. They are a wonderful team, but you were touching on the ability to finish. We all know, talking about quarterback whispers, right? I don't know if Kyle Shanahan is a quarterback whisperer, but he certainly puts an offensive system in place that will make any quarterback look fantastic. What are your thoughts and feelings on Jimmy Garoppolo? How's your confidence in him at the end of the day? Can he get it done?
Well, I think Jimmy Garoppolo is, he's growing as a player. We got to understand, he's still young in terms of his amount of starts in the NFL. And he's playing for Shanahan, and Shanahan does an outstanding job of making the game manageable for the quarterback. What you worry about with him is just the same thing we talked about Lamar Jackson. They're younger quarterbacks that haven't had the reps in the pocket to be comfortable enough in there yet to, can they win the game when you've got to make a throw? And I think that's where I have to say I don't know yet. And obviously he has all the tools. When the running game's going, he's much better, much like Goff. He's got probably the best tight end in football in Kittle. So he has the people around him to be a success. Now he's just got to go do it.
Right. No disagreement with me there. Let's see here. Back to the Cardinals really quick. The Cardinals are, well, they're building, and Cliff Kingsbury, he is definitely, trying, I think, proving that he even deserves his job. A lot of people question that hire. It was kind of weird that the turnover, how quickly the turnover was there in Arizona. Kyler Murray looking really hot last year, gets his new toy, DeAndre Hopkins. Where do you see them placing in the division at the end of the year?
Well, I could see them get to third. I could see them sneak ahead of the Rams if the Rams, have an injury or two. Their defense, you got to understand the Rams now have lost all three coordinators. So Sean McVay's got to, implement three new systems: offense, defense, and special teams. That's tough to do, especially in a training camp where you have no preseason games. You've had no off-season conditioning. You've had no off-season coaching sessions, no off-season OTAs. So that's a big ask. I think for Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, they signed Kelvin Beachum lately. That's going to help protect him because, Rachel, you look at the stats and you say, how in God's name is a quarterback who's as dynamic and as athletic as Kyler Murray is, how did he get hit so much last year? Their offensive line struggled. Yes. Defensively, Vance Joseph has got to show improvement on the defensive side of the ball. Drafting Isaiah Simmons, I think, was a huge thing for them because he's one of those, unique players that can play all three levels of the defense. But right now, I would say the jury's out on the Cardinals. And I think the jury's out on Cliff Kingsbury, actually, because when you look at guys who come in the league from college football, when you remember back when Chip Kelly came in and he had been head coach at Oregon and had all kinds of success, and then he came to the Eagles and right away, boy, they scored 40 and 50 points a game, and people are saying, he's going to revolutionize the game. But what happens is defensive coordinators have had a year now to look at Cliff's system, and they'll watch it very, very closely in the offseason. And, you can bet if there's a weakness that they're going to find it. And so it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, it definitely will. So where you place them at third, the odds that I'm seeing right now are that they're tied with the Rams at 6-1 odds for third and fourth place in the division. Seahawks are second, of course, 7-2 odds, and then the 49ers, of course, 5-7. So Vegas definitely agrees with you on that one. I want to hop back again to the NFC East. Dak Prescott. Okay, big conversation topic this offseason. Should they have paid him what he wants? The rumors are out there. I've heard everything from $40 million a year to 35, somewhere in there. He's getting a lot of money though with the franchise tag. But do you think they should have made a long-term big money deal with him?
Well, the risk of the franchise tag is that after when you can't tag him anymore, you may lose him for nothing. And, so it's a bet. It's a kind of a short-term hedge bet that the Cowboys are making on Dak. And I like the kid. I've known him since he was a high school kid in Louisiana. He went to Mississippi State and did extremely well at Mississippi State, which was a hard place to win. He won games there in the SEC. He's won as an NFL quarterback. I think he's in a he's pressurized situation being the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, and he's handled extremely well. I think there are enough tools around him. The question will be, and I think this is the way it always is with the Cowboys are an underachieving team in general. There's always hype around them. Jerry does a great job of hyping his football team and America's team and all of that. But then when it gets down to it, you got to perform, and you got to perform 16 straight weeks. Consistency has always been a challenge in Dallas. And I think that McCarthy, that's going to be his biggest hurdle to overcome.
For sure. I mean, McCarthy, you heard all the rumors whenever he was in Green Bay, and, did he and Aaron Rodgers have chemistry issues together and whatnot? And if you think he had a hard time there, I can only imagine the pressure that's on him coaching the team with that silver star on it, But the Cowboys, I do think that they're putting a lot of pressure on him, obviously, to win big this year. And so they're going all in. Like we said earlier, they added Everson Griffin. They went out and drafted wide receiver that the Eagles really wanted. And I only know this because I have a lot of friends that are Eagles fans. Probably the most passionate fan base in the NFL. They're kind of crazy. Don't quote me on that. They're a little crazy sometimes, but I know they lost their minds whenever they lost their wide receiver to the Cowboys in the draft. But the Eagles, I want to talk about them though. Where do you see this team going? And wide receiver is a problem for them.
Well, last year it was a huge problem. They got machine gunned at wide receiver. They couldn't keep guys healthy. They're playing with practice roster guys and guys off the street at the end. And Carson Wentz, I thought, did as good a job as a guy could do to elevate the team around him and continue to win with really Zach Ertz and Goddard, and that's about all he had to throw to. So, getting Deshaun Jackson back, having a year for those receivers that were so young and had to play before they were ready, giving them another year to play. And again, they've got a good offensive line. They run the ball well. Doug Peterson, who played quarterback for us in 1995, is an outstanding play caller on game day. They play good enough defense. They're more consistent than the Cowboys. And I think that the Cowboys have the better have the better roster. But I think the Eagles, top to bottom, are going to play more consistent week in and week out. And that's not a real strong division. When you look at the Giants, they're going to struggle. And I think Washington's in a total rebuild. So it's going to come down to the Eagles and the Cowboys in my mind.
Definitely did. And it did last season. We saw that. The Eagles right now are plus 1,000 to win the NFC. So, that's a big number. Cowboys plus 850. The last year, it came down to the Cowboys. They just needed to beat the Eagles, and they didn't get it done at the very end of the year. And that was, I think, a 7-7 team at the time. And defense was they were just injured. Everybody was injured. They had my alma mater's quarterback playing wide receiver for them with Greg Ward. So it'll be interesting to see where the Eagles go from there. Now, I would never wish injury upon anybody. I just want to make that very clear as I say this. There are prop bets out there, though, that I have seen regarding Carson Wentz's health. If he were to get injured this year, do they move on to Jalen Hurts permanently and cut him?
Well, I don't know if they'll cut him. That's a big one because there was a lot of pushback from Eagles fans, and you mentioned how passionate Eagles fans are when they drafted Jalen Hurts, because they said, hey, we have receiver needs. We have too many other needs on the football team to draft a quarterback, especially a quarterback that doesn't do what, Wentz does. I mean, Hurts is an athletic quarterback. You watched him both at Alabama and at Oklahoma. He can extend plays. He's more the Lamar Jackson type guy. But I think that if the Eagles are going to win, Wentz has to stay healthy. And that's not been his history, Rachel. So, again, I can understand why people would be out there throwing prop bet money at the fact that he may not be able to finish the season.
For sure. And real quick, we can't forget about the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers, another another quarterback who is probably wondering what the hell his team was doing when they drafted a quarterback. Where do you see the Packers stacking up in the NFC?
Oh, I'm going to tell you, the NFC North, to me, I wouldn't bet that division if somebody gave me money, because it's so crazy. Because you look at the Packers, and I thought the Packers last year, you talk about guy carrying his football team. Aaron Rodgers has Devontae Adams and he has Jones, the running back, and that's all he's got. And they go to one game away from the Super Bowl. Can they repeat that again? I don't know. I think Minnesota has taken a step back. They're going to be really young on defense. Is Kirk Cousins good enough to get you to the Super Bowl? Hasn't done it yet. And then you look at the Bears, what's going to happen with Trubisky and Foles? I think that's a drama that we'll see unfold with no preseason games. And this is crazy. I'm going to say this now, but I would not be surprised if if Matt Stafford could stay healthy, that the Lions could win that division at 9-9. I just don't know I'd stay away from that division like it had COVID-19.
I'm so glad you mentioned Matt Stafford. I'm a huge fan. Another guy who I've watched for a long time make chicken salad out of chicken poop. That's going to be a new phrase on the show, okay? That's going to be my new favorite phrase. But no, I'm a huge fan of his. And a lot of people forget, I don't know if it's because the market that he's in or what it is, that they're just not paying attention. But he was playing at an MVP level until he got injured last year. So I'm really excited to see what he does. And I would love to see that guy have some success for once up there in that very tough division. All right, so we're going to wrap up here. Jeff, who do you think AFC winner and NFC winner? Who's the matchup in the Super Bowl this year?
Well, I think until somebody else shows me, I'm going to say, just like last year, I think we'll see the 49ers and I think we'll see the Chiefs, and in a reboot, if you will, of the Super Bowl. And I'm going to say, I'll go one step further and say the Chiefs now start a run. They start a dynasty.
Hard to argue with you there. I'm going to go Chiefs and I'm going to go Bucks. And that's mainly because as a Falcons fan, I'm terrified of Tom Brady. I have PTSD from what he did to us in Super Bowl 51. And I think so highly of Bruce Arians. Historically, every time you sleep on Tom Brady, what does he do? He shows up and wins another ring. So yeah, I'm going to go Bucks and Chiefs, I think. And now with your AFC and NFC, who's the outright winner?
I really think that the Chiefs, unless they get injured, right? And there's so much that has to play out for this. That's why doing these is kind of fun at this stage, because there's really so much that has to play out. But right now, as long as Patrick Mahomes is playing quarterback and they have all that, they got a track team at wide receiver. I mean, seriously, they can all run. Nicole Hardman can run, Tyreek Hill can run, Sammy Watkins can run. Kelsey is a dynamic tight end. They're going to have whoever they put at running back to run the football. Tyrann Mathieu is a killer on defense, and so I just think that they're the best football team in the National Football League right now.
Yeah, it's hard to go against them. And Honey Badger, I know we have some fun tweets from him. He's a great Twitter follower, but I'm a huge fan of his. That kid has heart. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. I'm going to go my outright winner. I'm going to go with Tom Brady. I think he gets one more before it's all said and done. #LFG. I think he's going to get it. And then I think he's probably going to retire because I think him and Gronk are tired. But yeah, so thank you so much, Jeff. It was a great start to the show, to the NFL Pickswise show. And I hope that everybody out there will follow, like, and subscribe. We have Coach Jeff Reinebold and me, Rachael von Oranje. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.